Subscribe to Storylab. Now let's begin this one. The emergency room smelled like disinfectant and failure. Clark Martin sat in the plastic chair outside surgery, his hands still trembling from the adrenaline that had flooded his system 2 hours ago when Sarah's call came through. His wife stood by the vending machines, phone pressed to her ear, crying softly while she updated her sister. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly pale glow that made the waiting worse. Daniel was 19 years old, a sophomore at community college studying engineering, working part-time at the university library to help with tuition. He'd stopped at the Quick Mart on Westfield Avenue at 9:30 p.m. to grab energy drinks for his study session. Clark had told him 100 times not to go to that neighborhood after dark, but Daniel had laughed it off. "Dad, I'm not 12 anymore." Now their son was behind steel doors getting his jaw wired shut. Clark was 52, a construction foreman who'd spent 30 years building office complexes and apartment buildings across the city. His hands were calloused, his back was bad, and he'd worked 70-hour weeks for the past 3 decades to give his family a decent life. He'd never been in a real fight, a few shoving matches on job sites when crews got heated, nothing serious. He paid his taxes, coached Little League when Daniel was young, voted in every election. He believed in the system. The surgeon emerged at midnight. Dr. Patel was a slight man with tired eyes and steady hands. The surgery went well. His jaw is fractured in 2 places. We've wired it and plated the left side. He'll need to stay overnight for observation, but the prognosis is good. He'll be eating through a straw for 6 to 8 weeks. "Can we see him?" Sarah asked, her voice hoarse. "He's in recovery. Another hour, maybe less." After the doctor left, Clark finally looked at the police report the responding officers had given him at the scene. Officer Ramirez and his partner had been professional but detached. They'd taken Daniel's statement at the hospital, written down the basics, handed Clark a case number on a business card. Victim states he was approached by multiple suspects outside Quick Mart, 2847 Westfield Avenue, at approximately 9:35 p.m. Suspects demanded his belongings. When victim resisted, suspects assaulted him with fists and feet. Victim sustained facial injuries. Suspects fled with victim's backpack containing laptop, textbooks, wallet. Multiple suspects. Not 8 gang members. Not a coordinated attack. Just multiple suspects. When they'd finally let Clark see Daniel in recovery, his son's face was so swollen he barely recognized him. Purple bruises bloomed across his cheeks and forehead. His jaw was bound with wire and metal fixtures that looked medieval. Daniel's eyes, his mother's eyes, bright green, opened slowly when Clark took his hand. Daniel couldn't talk, could only make small noises in his throat. Clark squeezed his hand gently. "It's okay, son. Don't try to speak. You're going to be fine." But Daniel's eyes filled with tears, and Clark saw something in them he'd never seen before. Not pain from the injuries. Fear. His son was afraid. They brought Daniel home the next afternoon. Sarah had converted the living room into a makeshift bedroom, so Daniel wouldn't have to climb stairs. She bought protein shakes, smoothie ingredients, soup broth, everything he could consume through a straw. Clark had called his foreman, told him he needed a week off. 30 years with Apex Construction, and he'd never taken more than 3 consecutive days. Jacob Gonzalez stopped by that evening. Jacob had worked with Clark for 15 years, a crane operator with shoulders like a linebacker and a gentle demeanor that made him everyone's favorite coworker. He brought flowers for Sarah and a get-well card signed by the whole crew. "Jesus, Clark," Jacob said when he saw Daniel on the couch, face still grotesquely swollen. "They get the guys who did this." "Not yet." Clark walked Jacob into the kitchen, lowered his voice. "Cops are working on it." Jacob's expression said he knew that was bullshit, but he didn't press. "If you need anything, Hamano. Anything at all." After Jacob left, Clark sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and opened the case file the police had emailed. It was sparse. Daniel's statement. The responding officer's report. A note that detectives had been assigned. Detective Mark Richardson, badge 4729. Clark called the precinct. After 20 minutes on hold, Richardson picked up. "Yeah, Martin Case. I've got it here." The detective sounded distracted, like he was eating something. Look, Mr. Martin, I'll be straight with you. Your son couldn't identify any of the attackers. So they wore hoodies, it was dark. We've got no witnesses. The store owner says his security camera was malfunctioning that night. Malfunctioning. That's what he says. Sometimes these places, they've got dummy cameras. Or the footage loops, gets recorded over. Without video, without IDs, we've got nothing to work with. 8 guys attacked my son. Someone saw something. I understand your frustration, Mr. Martin. But Westfield Avenue at night, people don't talk. They see something, they look the other way. That's reality. How about your son's laptop serial number flagged in our system? If it gets pawned, we'll know. Beyond that. So you're doing nothing. Richardson's voice hardened. I'm doing my job with the resources and evidence available. You want to file a complaint, there's a number you can call. The line went dead. Clark sat in the kitchen for a long time after that call, staring at the case file on his laptop screen. Sarah came in around 10, touched his shoulder. Come to bed. In a bit. She hesitated. The insurance company called. Daniel's surgery is going to cost us $8,000 out of pocket. $8,000. The laptop Daniel lost was another $1,200. The textbooks, another $600. Clark's week off work, unpaid, would cost them another $2,000 in lost wages. Nearly $12,000. And that didn't account for the trauma, the fear in his son's eyes, the way Daniel flinched now when he heard loud noises. After Sarah went to bed, Clark did something he'd never done before. He opened a browser in incognito mode and searched Westfield Avenue gangs. The results were illuminating. News articles about drug arrests, assault charges, armed robberies, all clustered around that same 5-block radius. A community forum where residents complained about the Quick Mart being a gang hangout. Several posts mentioned a crew called the Westfield Boys, led by someone named Reuben Burke. Clark clicked on Burke's name. Facebook profile, public. 23 years old. Dozens of photos showing him throwing gang signs, posing with stacks of cash, wearing expensive sneakers. In one photo from 3 weeks ago, Burke stood outside the Quick Mart with 7 other young men. The caption, "My corner." Clark screenshotted the photo, zoomed in on each face. The next morning, Clark drove to the Quick Mart. It was a squat building with barred windows and a flickering neon sign. The parking lot was cracked asphalt studded with weeds. At 10 a.m., the place was empty except for an old Honda Civic parked by the dumpster. Inside, the store was cramped and poorly lit. Security cameras hung from the ceiling. 4 of them, all positioned to cover the registers and aisles. Behind the counter sat a heavy-set man in his 60s, reading a newspaper. His nameplate said owner. "Help you?" The man asked without looking up. Clark approached the counter. "You Nicholas Goodman?" Now the man looked up, eyes wary. "Who's asking?" "My son was attacked outside your store 2 nights ago." "Daniel Martin." "The police said your security footage was unavailable." Goodman's expression closed off. "Camera's been broken for a month. I keep meaning to fix them." Clark looked up at the nearest camera. A small LED light blinked red. Active. "That one looks operational. Just the light. Wiring shot. All 4 cameras." "Look, I'm sorry about your son, but I can't help you." Goodman returned to his newspaper. Conversation over. Clark stood there for a moment, studying the man. Goodman's hands trembled slightly as he held the paper. Not nervousness, fear. Someone had gotten to him. Outside, Clark sat in his truck and called Jacob. "You still know that kid who does IT work? The one who set up the office network? Taylor Summers?" "Yeah, why?" "I need someone who can recover deleted security footage." Pause. "Clark, what are you doing?" "My job, since the cops won't do theirs." Another pause. "I'll text you his number." "Be careful, Hermano." Taylor Summers was 26, skinny as a rail, with a patchy beard and nervous energy. He met Clark at a coffee shop near the university, carrying a laptop bag covered in stickers. "Jacob says you need tech help," Taylor said, dumping 3 sugar packets in his coffee. "I do data recovery, network security, some forensics work. Totally legal, mostly." Clark showed him a photo of the Quick Mart's camera system he'd taken on his phone. "Can you pull footage from a system like this if the owner claims it's not recording?" Taylor studied the photo. "DVR model. Yeah, that's a CloudWatch 4800. Decent system. If it's actually recording, The footage saves to an internal drive and backs up to cloud storage. If someone deleted local footage, there's usually a cloud backup with a 30-day retention. If they deleted that too, I might be able to recover it from the drive itself, depending on how thoroughly they wiped it. How much? For data recovery? Normally $1,500. But Jacob said your kid got hurt pretty bad. Taylor shrugged. $500. And you didn't get it from me. Clark agreed. That night, at 2 a.m., Clark and Taylor returned to the Quick Mart. The store was closed, security lights casting long shadows across the lot. Taylor brought a duffel bag of equipment. Clark brought bowl cutters. You sure about this? Taylor whispered as they approached the back entrance. No. Clark cut through the chain on the rear door. But I'm doing it anyway. Inside, Taylor went straight for the office behind the counter where the DVR was mounted. He connected a device to the system, fingers flying across his laptop keyboard. Okay, the system's definitely active. Recorded a local drive, and yeah, cloud backup is enabled. Someone's been regularly deleting footage. Last deletion was 2 days ago, the night your son got jumped. Can you recover it? Taylor's fingers continued their dance. Cloud backup uses rolling retention. They deleted the local file, but the cloud copy stays for 30 days unless manually purged. And got it. They didn't purge the cloud. Downloading now. 5 minutes later, Taylor had the footage on his laptop. They watched it in the office, illuminated by the screen's glow. 9:34 p.m. Daniel's car pulled into the lot. He got out, walked toward the store entrance. Before he reached the door, 8 figures emerged from the shadows near the dumpster. They surrounded Daniel quickly, efficiently. The lead figure, Clark recognized Reuben Burke from Facebook, said something. Daniel shook his head, backed up. Burke grabbed Daniel's backpack. Daniel held on. Then Burke nodded, and the others closed in. Clark watched his son go down under a hail of fists and kicks. He watched them stomp on Daniel's face. Watched Burke rifle through the backpack, taking the laptop, the wallet, leaving the textbooks scattered across the asphalt. The whole thing took 90 seconds. Before they left, Burke looked directly at the camera and smiled. Then he walked over to Goodman, who'd been watching from the doorway, frozen. Burke said something, and Goodman nodded frantically. Burke patted his shoulder, almost friendly, and walked away. Taylor stopped the recording. You got clear faces on all of them. This is solid evidence, man. Take it to the cops. Clark didn't respond. He was thinking about Burke's smile, the casual cruelty of it, the way he'd known exactly where the camera was. Copy it for me, Clark said finally. Everything. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. 3 days later, Clark sat in Detective Richardson's office at the precinct, a USB drive containing the footage on the desk between them. Richardson had watched the video twice, his expression never changing. Where'd you get this? Does it matter? You got them on camera. 8 suspects, clear faces, assault, and robbery. You can identify them. Richardson leaned back in his chair. You broke into that store. I recovered evidence the owner was intimidated into hiding. You committed a crime, Mr. Martin. I could arrest you right now. But you won't. Richardson studied him for a long moment. No, I won't. Because you're right, this is good evidence. But here's the reality. Reuben Burke and his crew, they've been arrested before. Assault, drug possession, weapons charges. They've got a lawyer, some public defender who's good at her job. They'll claim mistaken identity, say the footage is unclear, get statements from their mothers saying they were home that night. Maybe 1 or 2 of them do 6 months. Maybe. That's it? 6 months for what they did to my son. That's the system, Mr. Martin. It's not perfect. Clark stood up. Keep the footage. Do what you want with it. What are you going to do? Go home. Take care of my son. Richardson's eyes narrowed. Don't do anything stupid. These guys, they're dangerous. They've got nothing to lose. Clark met his gaze. Neither do I. That night, Clark created a new folder on his laptop. Burke Crew. Inside, he started compiling information. He printed a screenshot from the Quick Mart footage showing all 8 faces clearly. Then he went hunting. Reuben Burke was easy. His Facebook was a catalog of his criminal lifestyle. Clark learned he dealt drugs from a corner on Westfield and 23rd, drove a modified Dodge Charger, had a girlfriend named Latoya McBride who posted photos of the expensive gifts he bought her. Burke lived with his mother in a subsidized housing complex on the east side. Carl Gaines was Burke's right hand in half of Burke's photos. Gaines had done time for armed robbery 3 years ago, got out on parole last year. He worked in an auto body shop on Miller Avenue, Precision Collision. Guillermo Griffin was younger, maybe 20. His Instagram showed him obsessed with sneakers. Hundreds of photos of limited edition Jordans and Yeezys. He worked at a shoe store in the mall. Clyde Hancock had a distinctive scar across his left eyebrow. Facebook showed he was into underground fighting, bare-knuckle brawls in warehouse basements. Posted videos of himself knocking people out, bragging about how much money he won betting on himself. Melvin Sharp was the quiet one. His social media was sparse, mostly reposts of conspiracy theories and anti-government memes. Clark found him through a People search site. He lived alone in a trailer park near the industrial district. Russell Kinney was easy to find because he'd been arrested 2 weeks before Daniel's attack for shoplifting at a CVS. The mugshot was in the public record. He lived 2 blocks from Burke. Muhammad Lil was harder. No social media presence under that name. But one of Burke's photos showed him tagged at a restaurant. His family owned a Vietnamese faux place on the south side. Clark drove by it the next day. Lil was there, working the register. Stuart Hill was the last one. Took Clark 3 days to find him. Hill was a student at the same community college as Daniel, which made Clark's blood boil. He'd attacked Daniel, and they shared a campus. Hill's LinkedIn showed he was studying business, worked part-time at a Starbucks. 8 names, 8 faces, 8 people who'd put his son in the hospital and smiled about it. Clark printed their photos, pinned them to a corkboard in his garage workshop. Then he sat in front of that board for hours, thinking, planning. Sarah found him there at midnight. Clark, come to bed. Soon. She looked at the board, at the photos, at the notes he'd scrawled about each person. Her expression shifted from concern to understanding to fear. What are you doing? Research. For what? He turned to face her. 30 years of marriage, and she could read him like a book. The police aren't going to do anything, Sarah. Richardson as much as said so. These guys will get a slap on the wrist, if that. Meanwhile, Daniel can't eat solid food. He has nightmares. He's afraid to leave the house. So what's your plan? You're going to confront them? You could get hurt, or killed, or arrested. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. She was quiet for a moment. Yes, you have. He didn't deny it. Sarah stepped closer, looked at the board, at Reuben Burke's smiling face. Whatever you do, she said finally, don't get caught. Then she kissed his cheek and went inside. Clark spent the next week watching them. He took personal leave from work, told his crew he needed to focus on Daniel's recovery. Every morning he'd drop Sarah at her job at the hospital where she worked as a records administrator. Then he'd drive to Westfield Avenue and observe. Burke's operation was predictable. He showed up at the corner every day around 2 p.m., stayed until midnight. Customers, mostly junkies and high school kids, came and went. Burke always had at least 2 crew members with him, usually Gaines and one other rotating member. They'd post up outside the Quick Mart, protected by Goodman's force blind eye. Clark watched from different positions, across the street in a laundromat's parking lot, from inside a Burger King 2 blocks down, from his truck parked behind an abandoned warehouse with sight lines to the corner. He took notes. Patterns. Routines. Weaknesses. Gaines worked at Precision Collision from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. He was a mechanic, worked alone in the back bay. The shop owner was never there, left Gaines unsupervised. Griffin worked at the shoe store Tuesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Always on his phone between customers, probably coordinating Burke's drug deals. Hancock fought every Friday night at a warehouse near the docks. Clark went once, stayed in the shadows. Watched Hancock brutalize an opponent in a makeshift ring while drunk men shouted and threw money. Hancock was good, fast, vicious, trained. But he fought angry, wild, exploitable. The others he tracked carefully. Sharp living alone in his trailer. Kinney staying with his grandmother in a house that looked ready to collapse. Lou working at his family's restaurant, his parents treating him like a prince despite what he really was. Hill attending classes, serving lattes, living a normal college life while Daniel suffered. By the end of the week, Clark had a complete dossier on each of them. Their routines, their homes, their weaknesses, their pressure points. That Friday night, he sat in his garage workshop, looking at the board. 8 faces stared back at him. Sarah's words echoed. Don't get caught. He thought about Daniel, about the fear in his son's eyes, about the system's failure, about Richardson's resigned acceptance that nothing would really happen to these men. Then Clark started planning. He'd spent 30 years building things. Now it was time to tear something down. The first one was Melvin Sharp. Sharp was the easiest target. Isolated, paranoid, living alone in a rusted trailer at the edge of a park where nobody asked questions. Clark had watched him for 3 days, learned his schedule. Sharp worked nights at a warehouse loading dock, came home around 2 a.m., slept until noon, spent his afternoons online reading conspiracy theories and posting angry rants. Clark chose a Tuesday night. He parked his truck a quarter mile from the trailer park, walked in carrying a toolbox. Just another worker in jeans and a flannel shirt, invisible in the industrial district. Sharp's trailer was dark, aluminum siding peeling, surrounded by waist-high weeds. A motorcycle was parked on a concrete pad. Sharp's pride and joy based on the photos he'd posted online. Clark had watched him work on it for hours last Saturday, polishing chrome, adjusting the engine. Clark checked his watch. 1:47 a.m. Sharp would be home in 13 minutes. He moved to the motorcycle, opened his toolbox, and went to work. It took him 8 minutes to loosen the brake caliper bolts, just enough to score the brake line so it would rupture under pressure to make everything look normal. 30 years in construction had taught him how things worked and how to make them fail. At 2:03 a.m., Sharp's beat-up Camry pulled into the dirt driveway. Sharp got out, stretched, checked his phone. He glanced at his motorcycle, smiled. Then he went inside. Clark was already gone. 2 days later, Clark was in his garage when Jacob called. You hear about the accident on Highway 9? Clark's hand tightened on the phone. No. Some guy lost his brakes on his motorcycle, went through a guardrail. Happened last night. He's at St. Mary's. Broke both legs, some ribs, his collarbone. They're saying he's lucky to be alive. That's terrible. Yeah. Jacob paused. Guy's name is Melvin Sharp. Wasn't that one of the names on your board? Clark didn't answer. Clark, Hermano, what did you do? I'm taking care of my son. That's all. This is dangerous. You need to stop. I can't. Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Then at least be smart about it. And if you need help. I didn't say that. After he hung up, Clark felt something he hadn't felt since this started. Not satisfaction exactly. Something colder. Sharper. 7 more to go. He looked at the board, at Carl Gaines's photo, and started planning the next move. Gaines was different. Smarter, more cautious. He was Bert's enforcer, the muscle, and he didn't make mistakes. Clark had watched him for days, looking for an opening, finding nothing. Then he realized he didn't need an opening. He just needed leverage. Precision Collision was a small shop, 2 bays, owned by a man named Hubert Buckley who spent more time in the bar than at his business. Gaines ran the place, took appointments, did the work, handled the money. The shop's books were a mess. Clark could tell just from watching the operation. Cash payments, no receipts, probably skimming from insurance claims. Clark knew a fire inspector. They'd worked together on a hospital renovation 5 years ago, stayed friendly. Guy named Randy Lucas, straight-laced but willing to do favors for people he trusted. Clark called him. Randy, I need your help with something. What kind of something? The legal kind. Mostly. Randy laughed. Those are the best kind. What do you need? Anonymous tip about a business. Possible code violations, unsafe working conditions, improper storage of hazardous materials. Which business? Clark gave him the address of Precision Collision. I'll schedule an inspection, Randy said. But Clark, if there's nothing there, there will be. Trust me. Randy called him 3 days later. Jesus Christ, Clark. That place is a disaster. Improper ventilation, flammable materials stored wrong, electrical violations, no proper permits for half the equipment. I had to shut them down immediately. Owners looking at $20,000 in fines, maybe more. What about the employee? The mechanic? Carl Gaines? He's out of job. Owners threatening to sue him. Says Gaines was responsible for the safety violations. Whole thing's a mess. Perfect. Clark waited 2 days, then made his move. He knew Gaines would be desperate, angry, scrambling for money. Men like that made mistakes. He tracked Gaines to a bar on the east side, a dive where Burke's crew hung out. Gaines was drinking alone at the corner of the bar, looking bitter. Clark sat 3 stools away, ordered a beer, waited. After Gaines's 4th drink, Clark made his approach. Rough week. Gaines glanced at him, suspicious. Do I know you? No, but I know what happened to your shop. Fire marshal shut you down. Fucking Buckley, Gaines muttered. Cheap bastard, never wanted to fix anything right. You worked there long? 3 years. Now I got nothing. Gaines drained his glass, signaled for another. And I got bills. Got people expecting me to deliver. Burke? Gaines's eyes narrowed. How do you know Burke? I know a lot of things. Clark sipped his beer. I also know your old boss is probably going to try and make you the fall guy for those violations. Might even go to the cops, say you were stealing from him. That's bullshit. Of course it is. But if he files a police report, you're looking at jail time. Parole violation, back inside. Gaines's face went pale. Fuck. Unless, Clark said carefully, someone convinced Buckley that filing that report would be a bad idea. Someone like you? Maybe. For a price. Gaines studied him. What price? Information. I'm looking for someone. Kid named Reuben Burke. Heard you know him. The temperature in Gaines's expression dropped 20 degrees. You a cop? Do I look like a cop? Then what are you? Clark met his eyes. Someone who wants to have a conversation with Burke. Friendly like. Gaines laughed, humorless. Nobody has friendly conversations with Burke. You got a death wish. I've got a proposition. But first, I need to know where he'll be tomorrow night. Alone. Gaines was quiet for a long moment, weighing options, calculating odds. Finally, what about Buckley? I'll handle him. You give me Burke, I'll make sure Buckley keeps his mouth shut about the shop. It was a lie. Clark had no leverage over Buckley, but Gaines was desperate enough to believe it. Burke's got a girl, Gaines said finally. LaToya. He sees her every Wednesday night at her apartment on Grove Street. Goes alone, doesn't bring backup. That's the only time he's vulnerable. Address? Gaines gave it to him. One more thing, Clark said. The attack outside Quick Mart 2 weeks ago. The kid with the backpack. Burke planned that. Gaines's expression shifted. Confusion, then recognition. You're that kid's father. Clark didn't deny it. Then you're making a mistake, Gaines said. Burke finds out you're coming for him. He'll kill you. He can try. Gaines shook his head slowly. Your funeral, man. Clark left the bar and drove to a storage facility on the outskirts of town. He'd rented a unit here under a fake name, paid cash for 6 months. Inside were supplies he'd been gathering. Tools, rope, a burner phone, a hunting knife he'd bought at a pawn shop. He sat in the unit, alone in the dim light, thinking about what came next. This was the point of no return. Going after Burke directly, the leader, that was escalation. That was war. He thought about Sarah's words. Don't get caught. He thought about Daniel, still recovering, still afraid. He thought about the system that had failed them. Then he locked up the storage unit and drove home, already planning Wednesday night. LaToya McBride lived in a 3rd-floor apartment in a complex that had seen better days. Clark arrived early, parked across the street with a clear view of the entrance. At 9:17 p.m., Burke's Charger pulled into the lot, music thumping loud enough to rattle windows. Burke got out alone, as Gaines had promised. He wore designer clothes, jewelry that probably cost more than Clark made in a month. He walked into the building like he owned it. Clark gave him 10 minutes, then followed. The apartment building had no security, no cameras in the stairwell. Clark climbed to the 3rd floor, found apartment 3C. Music played inside, R&B, volume high. He could hear voices, laughter. He knocked. The music cut off. Footsteps approached. The door opened a crack, chains still attached. LaToya peered out, early 20s, beautiful, annoyed. Who are you? Maintenance. Got a complaint about noise. We ain't that loud. Ma'am, I need to check your unit. New City Ordinance. She rolled her eyes, but unchained the door. Make it quick. Clark pushed inside, closed the door behind him. LaToya's expression shifted from annoyance to fear when she saw his face. Burke emerged from the bedroom, shirtless. When he saw Clark, his hand went automatically to his waistband, going for a gun. But Clark was faster. He pulled the hunting knife from his jacket, closed the distance in 2 steps, pressed the blade against Burke's throat. Move and you're dead, Clark said quietly. Burke froze. Who the fuck are you? Daniel Martin's father. Recognition flickered across Burke's face. The kid from Quick Mart. That's right. LaToya had backed into the corner, phone in hand. Clark shook his head. Put it down. I'm not here to hurt you. Just him. LaToya, call the cops, Burke said. Call them, Clark agreed. Tell them there's a man here who has video evidence of your boyfriend assaulting a college student. See how that works out. LaToya hesitated, phone shaking in her hand. Here's what's going to happen, Clark said to Burke. You and I are going to have a conversation. Then you're going to make some changes in your life. Or what happened to Melvin Sharp is going to look like a vacation compared to what I do to you. Burke's eyes widened slightly. You did that? The motorcycle? I did that. You're fucking crazy. No, I'm a father. There's a difference. Clark increased the pressure of the knife slightly, drawing a bead of blood. Now, you're going to tell me everything about that night. Who planned it, who did what, and why my son? Burke's jaw clenched. Random. He was just there. Try again. I'm serious. We saw him pull up. Nice car, laptop bag. Easy target. Wasn't personal. It's personal now. Clark pulled out his phone with his free hand, showed Burke a photo, the security footage screenshot showing all 8 faces clearly. I know who you are. All of you. And I'm going to find each one of you, one by one, until you're all in the hospital, or in the ground, or in prison. Your choice. You can't. I already did. Sharp's in traction. Gaines is unemployed and probably going to jail. Want to guess who's next? Burke's breathing had gone shallow. What do you want? I want you to suffer. The way my son suffered. The way my family is suffering. But I'm willing to negotiate. What kind of negotiate? Clark pulled the knife back slightly but kept it ready. You turn yourself in. All 8 of you. Full confession. Assault, robbery, conspiracy. You allocate to everything. And you serve real time. 5 years minimum. Burke laughed, sharp and bitter. You're out of your mind. Probably. But here's your alternative. I make your life hell. I destroy everything you have, everyone you care about. I'm methodical, Burke. I've got time, resources, and nothing left to lose. So you can take your chances with me. Or you can take your chances with the system. The system will give me 18 months, tops. Then I'll be waiting when you get out. They stared at each other, predator and prey, neither quite sure which was which. Finally, Burke said, I need to think about it. You've got 48 hours. Clark backed toward the door, knife still ready. After that, I come for the rest of your crew. And eventually, I come for you. For real. He left before Burke could respond, taking the stairs 2 at a time, out to his truck. As he drove away, he checked his rearview mirror constantly, half expecting Burke to follow, to retaliate. But the street stayed empty. At home, Sarah was waiting up. How'd it go? I talked to him. Gave him a choice. Will he take it? I don't know. She studied his face. You look different. Different how? Harder. She touched his cheek. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. Me neither. That night, Clark couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Burke's face, the fear mixed with rage. About LaToya in the corner, terrified. About the knife in his hand, how easy it would have been to push it deeper. He'd crossed a line tonight. Maybe several lines. But when he thought about Daniel, about the months of recovery ahead, about the trauma that would never fully heal, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. At 3 a.m., his burner phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You made a mistake. Clark stared at the message for a long time. Then he deleted it and went back to planning. 48 hours passed. Burke didn't turn himself in. Clark hadn't expected him to. Men like Burke didn't surrender, they escalated. Which meant Clark had to escalate harder. He chose Guillermo Griffin next. The sneaker obsession made him predictable, and his mall job made him accessible. More importantly, Griffin was young, probably the least loyal to Burke. If Clark could crack him, get him to flip on the others, it might create a domino effect. Clark spent 2 days watching Griffin work at the shoe store, noting his schedule, his habits. Griffin took his break at 3 p.m., always went to the food court, always ordered the same thing, orange chicken from the Chinese place. On Thursday, Clark waited at the food court. When Griffin sat down with his meal, Clark took the chair across from him. Griffin looked up, confused. Do I know you? No, but I know you. Guillermo Griffin, right? You were at Quick Mart 2 weeks ago. Griffin's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You and 7 others jumped a college kid, broke his jaw, stole his laptop. It's on video. Clear as day. Griffin started to stand. Clark grabbed his wrist, squeezed just hard enough to hurt. Sit down. We're having a conversation. I'll scream. Security's right there. Go ahead. Then I'll show them the video. Show the police. Show your boss. Show your mother. Celia Griffin, right? Lives on Oak Street. Wonder how she'll feel knowing her son beats up innocent people for fun. Griffin sat back down, his hands shaking. What do you want? I want you to testify against Reuben Burke. Tell the police everything. How he organized the attack, gave the orders, took the laptop. You do that. Maybe the prosecutor goes easy on you. Maybe you do community service instead of jail time. Burke will kill me. Maybe. Or maybe I'll kill you first if you don't cooperate. Griffin's eyes went wide. You're bluffing. Clark leaned closer. I put Melvin Sharp in the hospital with brake failure. I got Carl Gaines fired and facing prison time. Last night, I held a knife to Burke's throat in his girlfriend's apartment. Do I look like I'm bluffing? Griffin stared at him, breathing fast, trapped. Even if I wanted to, Burke's got connections. The cops can't protect me. So leave town. Take a bus to California, start over. Better than what I'll do to you if you stay. This is insane. This is justice. The system failed my son, so I'm making my own. Griffin was quiet for a long moment. Then, if I talk, you'll leave me alone? If you talk to the police, give them everything, and Burke goes to prison? Then yes. We're done. How do I know you won't? Clark stood up. You don't. That's the point. Either you trust me, or you trust that Burke's loyalty is worth dying for. Your choice. He walked away, leaving Griffin sitting there, terrified and calculating. That night, Clark got a call from Detective Richardson. We need to talk. About what? I just had a very interesting conversation with a young man named Guillermo Griffin. He walked into the station an hour ago and confessed to assaulting Daniel Martin. Says he wants to make a deal. Clark kept his voice neutral. That's good news. Is it? Because Griffin also said someone threatened him. Someone who sounds a lot like you. I don't know what you're talking about. Richardson sighed. Clark, I get it. The system's slow. It's frustrating. But you can't go around threatening witnesses. It taints the case. If Burke's lawyer finds out Griffin was coerced, did Griffin give you anything useful? Pause. Yes. He gave us names, details, corroboration for the video evidence. With his testimony, we can build a solid case against Burke and the others. Then why are you calling me? Because you need to stop. Whatever you're doing, it ends now. Let us handle it from here. Will Burke go to prison? Probably. Griffin's testimony, the video, we can make assault and robbery stick. Burke's looking at 3 to 5 years minimum. 3 to 5 years. For putting Daniel in the hospital. For terrorizing the neighborhood. For ruining lives. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. Okay, Clark said. I'll back off. I don't believe you. Then why'd you call? To warn you. Burke knows someone's coming for his crew. He's preparing. If you go after him or the others now, you might not walk away. Duly noted. After Richardson hung up, Clark sat in his garage, looking at the board. 2 down, Sharp and Griffin. 6 to go. Richardson wanted him to stop. Sarah wanted him safe. The smart play was to let the system take over, let Griffin's testimony do its work, let Burke and the others face consequences through proper channels. But when Clark closed his eyes, he saw Daniel's swollen face. The fear in his son's eyes. The way the system had shrugged and said, nothing we can do. He couldn't stop. Not yet. Not until all 8 of them paid. Clark chose Russell Kinney next. Kinney was small-time, a follower, not a leader. He lived with his grandmother, Donna McNamara, in a dilapidated house on the south side. Clark had watched them together, saw how Kinney pretended to be a good grandson, helping her with groceries, fixing things around the house, all while selling drugs for Burke on the side. Clark did his research. Donna McNamara was 78, diabetic, living on Social Security. The house was mortgaged, barely holding together. She had no idea her grandson was a criminal. On Saturday morning, Clark knocked on her door. When she answered, he introduced himself as a home inspector doing a neighborhood survey for the city. She invited him in, sweet and trusting. Inside, the house was clean but falling apart. Water damage in the ceiling, outlets that sparked, a furnace that wheezed. Clark pretended to take notes while actually cataloging every violation, every hazard. "Your grandson takes good care of you," Clark said. Donna smiled. "Russell's a good boy. Has his troubles, but he's trying." "What kind of troubles?" "Oh, got in with a bad crowd when he was younger. But he's straightening out. He's got a job now, helps with bills." Clark doubted the job was legitimate. "That's good to hear. Has the city done any recent inspections on this property?" "Not for years. Can't afford to fix things even if they tell me to." "Perfect." After he left, Clark called Randy Lucas again. "I need another favor. Urgent inspection." "Clark, I can't keep doing this. This one's important. Safety issue. Elderly woman living in dangerous conditions." Randy sighed. "Address." Clark gave it to him. The inspection happened Monday morning. Randy called Clark that afternoon. "That house is a death trap. I had to red tag it, condemned until major repairs are made. Estimated $30,000 in work. The owner can't stay there until it's fixed." "What happens to her?" "Emergency housing, probably. Family takes her in. It's not ideal, but it's safer than that house." That night, Clark was waiting outside when Russell Kinney came home and found his grandmother's things being loaded into a social services van. Kinney was screaming at the workers, at Randy, at everyone. Donna was crying, confused. Clark watched from his truck, feeling nothing. 2 days later, Kinney found him. Clark was at a Home Depot, buying supplies for a legitimate job. Sarah's garden shed needed new roofing. Kinney appeared at the end of the aisle, flanked by Mohammed Lowe. "You," Kinney said, voice shaking with rage. "You did that. You got my grandma's house condemned." Clark set down the shingles he'd been examining. "Prove it. Burke told us about you. The crazy father looking for revenge. You think we're scared? You should be." Lou stepped forward, young, cocky, trying to be intimidating. "You hurt one more of us, we hurt your family. That's a promise." Clark's blood went cold. "You touch my family, and what I've done so far will look like mercy." Kinney laughed, bitter. "Your son's already hurt. What's left? Your wife? She works at St. Mary's Hospital, right? Easy to find." The threat hung in the air. Clark grabbed Kinney by the shirt, slammed him against the shelving. Products clattered to the floor. "Listen very carefully. You go near my family, I will end you. Not hurt you, not scare you. End you. Understand?" Lou pulled out a phone. "I'm calling the cops." "Do it. Then I'll show them the video of you attacking my son." Lee's thumb hovered over the screen, but didn't press. Clark released Kinney, stepped back. "Go tell Burke this is between him and me. Leave my family out of it, and I'll leave yours alone. But if anyone touches Sarah or Daniel, all bets are off." Kinney straightened his shirt, eyes full of hate. "You started this." "No, Burke started it. I'm just finishing it." They left, but the threat lingered. That night, Clark sat Sarah down and told her everything. The attacks on Sharp and Gaines, the threats to Griffin, the confrontation with Burke, today's encounter with Kinney and Lowe. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "They threatened me," she said finally. "Yes. What are you going to do? Make sure they can't follow through." "Ow!" Clark didn't answer. Sarah reached across the table, took his hand. "I meant what I said before. Don't get caught. But also, don't become them. Don't let this revenge turn you into the kind of person who'd threaten an innocent woman. I'm not, aren't you? You got Russell Kinney's grandmother thrown out of her home. She didn't do anything to Daniel. She's safer now. That house was a hazard. That's not why you did it." She was right, and they both knew it. "I don't know how to stop," Clark admitted. "Every time I think I'm done, I remember Daniel's face. And I get angry all over again. Then channel it. Be smart. Protect us, but don't lose yourself doing it." After she went to bed, Clark sat alone in the garage, thinking about her words. About lines he'd crossed and lines he hadn't. About what kind of man he wanted to be when this was over. His phone buzzed. Text from Jacob. "News is reporting Burke and 3 others were arrested. Assault charges. Griffin's testifying." Clark pulled up the news on his laptop. There was Reuben Burke, Carl Gaines, Guillermo Griffin, and Clyde Hancock arrested in connection with an assault. Richardson had moved fast, but that was only 4 of them. 4 down, 4 to go. Melvin Sharp, hospitalized, Russell Kinney, Muhammad Liu, and Stuart Hill. And Burke, even for jail, could still give orders. The next move came from an unexpected direction. Daniel spoke for the first time since the attack. It was a Sunday afternoon. Daniel's jaw had healed enough to remove some of the wiring. He still couldn't eat solid food, but he could talk, slowly, carefully, painfully. "Dad," he said, voice weak. "I know what you've been doing." Clark looked up from his laptop. "What do you mean?" "The guys who attacked me. Melvin Sharp's accident. Gaines losing his job. Griffin turning himself in. It's you." Clark started to deny it, but Daniel cut him off. "Don't lie to me. I'm not stupid." He paused, wincing. "I appreciate it, what you're doing, but you need to stop." "Why?" "Because you're going to get hurt, or arrested, or killed." Daniel's eyes were wet. "I can't lose you, Dad. Mom can't lose you. It's not worth it. They hurt you, and they'll pay for it." The police arrested Burke. Griffin's testifying. That's justice. That's not enough. It has to be. Daniel reached out, gripped Clark's arm with surprising strength. "Please, Dad. Stop. Come back to us." Clark looked at his son, 19 years old, jaw wired, face still bruised, but alive and healing, asking him to stop, begging him to stop. "Okay," Clark heard himself say. "Okay." He meant it in that moment. He really did. But that night, alone in his garage, Clark found himself staring at the board again. 4 faces remained: Kinney, Liu, Hill, and Hancock, who'd been arrested but bailed out back on the street. Richardson had called earlier with an update. Burke and Gaines were in jail, no bail. Griffin had made his deal, testimony for probation. Hancock had bonded out thanks to his fighting winnings, but there was a warrant out for his rearrest. That left Kinney, Liu, and Hill untouched, and they'd threatened Sarah. Clark thought about Daniel's words, about Sarah's warning, about the man he wanted to be. Then he thought about Kinney's smirk, Lee's threat, the idea of them walking free while his son suffered. He picked up his phone, called Taylor Summers. "Clark, it's 2 a.m., man. I need information on 2 people, Muhammad Liu and Stuart Hill. Everything you can find, addresses, social media, phone records if you can get them, financial info. Anything. Clark, are you sure about this?" "I'm sure. This is getting dangerous. The cops are involved now. Burke's crew knows you're hunting them. Can you do it or not?" Pause. "Give me 48 hours. Taylor delivered. 2 days later, Clark had complete profiles on both men. Muhammad Liu was 22, second-generation Vietnamese American. His parents, Saul and Marta Liu, owned the Pho restaurant and treated it like a family shrine. They had no idea Muhammad sold drugs for Burke, thought he was studying business at the community college. Liu lived above the restaurant, drove a BMW his parents had bought him for his birthday. Stuart Hill was 21, studying business, worked at Starbucks 15 hours a week. He came from money. His parents, Robert and Christy Hill, lived in a gated community on the north side. Stuart had a trust fund, nice apartment near campus, all the privilege in the world. He'd attacked Daniel for fun, for the thrill of it. Clark spent the next week watching both of them, looking for angles, weaknesses, opportunities. Liu was careful. He never sold drugs near the restaurant, always met clients in parks or parking lots. But he was predictable. Same routes, same times, same cautious patterns. Hill was careless. He went to parties, got drunk, posted everything on Instagram. He had no idea danger was circling. Clark started with Hill. On a Friday night, Clark followed Hill to a house party in the suburbs. Hill arrived at 10 p.m., already drunk based on his Instagram stories. Clark waited until midnight, until Hill stumbled out with a girl, Brooke Sherwood, based on the tag photos. They got into Hill's BMW, started driving. Clark followed at a distance. Hill was driving erratically, weaving slightly. Perfect. At a red light, Clark pulled up beside them, rolled down his window, made eye contact with Hill. Recognition flickered across Hill's face. Drunk, but not so drunk he didn't remember the encounter at Home Depot, the story Burke must have told. The light turned green. Hill punched the gas, speeding away. Clark followed, staying close. Hill accelerated, trying to lose him. They hit 45 in a 35 zone, 50 in a 40. Clark watched the speedometer, patient. Then he saw it, blue and red lights in his rearview mirror. He slowed down, pulled over. Let the cop pass him, chase Hill instead. 2 minutes later, Hill was pulled over, failing a field sobriety test, getting arrested for DUI, with Brooke crying in the passenger seat. Clark drove past slowly, watched the scene unfold, then went home. The DUI was Hill's third strike. His lawyer tried to plead it down, but the prosecutor, aided by an anonymous tip about Hill's connection to the Daniel Martin assault case, pushed for maximum penalties. Hill got 18 months, lost his trust fund, got expelled from school. One down. Muhammad Lou was harder. He was smarter, more connected to his family, more careful. Clark couldn't just sabotage him directly without collateral damage to innocent people. So he went another route. Clark knew the restaurant was struggling. He'd seen the permits, the health inspection reports, the financial records Taylor had pulled. The Les were barely breaking even, pouring everything into keeping the place afloat. He also knew Muhammad's drug money was propping up the business. The BMW, the expensive clothes, the cash Muhammad occasionally loaned his parents. It was all dirty money. Clark made an anonymous call to the IRS. Reported suspicious income, cash deposits, possible money laundering. Attached Muhammad Lee's name and the restaurant's business license number. 3 weeks later, federal agents showed up at the restaurant. They froze the accounts, started an audit, questioned the family. Saul and Marta were devastated to learn where Muhammad's money came from. The shame, the betrayal, it broke them. Muhammad, facing federal charges, made a deal. He testified against Burke, gave up supplier names, detailed the whole operation. In exchange, he got 5 years instead of 20. His parents disowned him. Clark watched the restaurant close, saw the for sale sign go up, and felt a twinge of guilt. Saul and Marta were innocent. But Muhammad had threatened Sarah, had attacked Daniel. Sometimes innocent people got hurt. That was the cost. That left Russell Kinney and Clyde Hancock. Hancock was still in the wind, dodging his arrest warrant. Professional fighters knew how to disappear when they needed to. Clark couldn't find him, and without leverage or bait, he couldn't draw him out. So he focused on Kinney. Kinney had moved his grandmother to a small apartment across town, paid for by emergency housing assistance. But Kinney himself was running out of options. With Burke in jail, the drug operation collapsed. No money coming in, no job, no prospects. Clark followed Kinney for 2 weeks, watching him spiral. Kinney tried to restart the drug business on his own, but he didn't have Burke's connections or muscle. He got robbed twice, beat up once. Clark waited, patient, watching. Then Kinney made a mistake. Desperate for cash, Kinney tried to rob a convenience store, not Quick Mart, but a 7-Eleven on the east side. He wore a mask, carried a gun, demanded money from the register. The clerk was ex-military. He pulled his own gun, shot Kinney in the leg. Kinney went down, bleeding, screaming. The clerk held him at gunpoint until police arrived. Clark heard about it on the news. Kinney was in custody, facing armed robbery charges on top of the assault charges from Daniel's case. He was looking at 15 to 20 years. 6 down. That night, Clark sat in his garage, looking at the board. 6 faces crossed out. Only 2 remained, Clyde Hancock and Reuben Burke. Hancock was still free, still dangerous. But Burke was in jail, facing trial, looking at serious time. Richardson called with an update. Burke's trial is set for 3 months from now. With Griffin and Lee's testimony, the video evidence, and Kinney likely to flip for a plea deal, we've got him cold. He's going away for a long time. How long? 5 to 8 years, minimum. Probably more if the jury's sympathetic. 5 to 8 years. Burke will be 31 when he got out. Still young. Still dangerous. What about Hancock? Clark asked. Still looking for him. He's smart, gone aground. But he'll surface eventually. They always do. After the call ended, Clark updated the board. Then he did something he hadn't done in months. He called Daniel. Hey, Dad. Hey, son. How are you feeling? Better. Jaw's almost healed. Back in classes next week. That's great. Pause. You stopped doing what you were doing? Clark looked at the board. At Burke's photo. At Hancock's empty space. Yeah, he lied. I stopped. Good. Mom's worried about you. I know. Tell her I'm fine. After he hung up, Clark stared at Burke's photo for a long time. The leader. The one who'd smiled at the camera. the one who'd ordered the attack. 5 to 8 years wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But maybe, just maybe, Clark could make it worse. The plan came together slowly over the next month. Clark used his construction connections, called in favors, gathered information. He learned Burke had enemies. Rival dealers, people he'd screwed over, families of people he'd hurt. The criminal underworld was small, and Burke had made a lot of enemies over the years. Clark reached out carefully, anonymously. Made contact with a dealer Burke had robbed 2 years ago, a man named Guy Wolf who ran operations on the South Side. Wolf had been looking for revenge, but couldn't act openly. Too much heat, too risky. Clark offered him something better, information. He gave Wolf the names of Burke's suppliers, his distribution network, his money drops, everything Mohammed Lou had testified about in federal court, now public record. Clark packaged it all together and delivered it anonymously to Wolf's crew. Wolf used that information to dismantle what remained of Burke's operation. Took over the territory, absorbed the customers, erased Burke's legacy from the streets. By the time Burke went to trial, he had nothing left. No crew, no money, no reputation. Just charges and enemies waiting for him in prison. The trial was quick. Burke's public defender tried, but the evidence was overwhelming. Video footage, multiple testimonies, physical evidence. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge was harsh. Mr. Burke, you organized a brutal attack on an innocent young man. You showed no remorse, attempted to intimidate witnesses, and corrupted others into following your path. This court sentences you to 12 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for 8 years. 12 years. Clark sat in the back of the courtroom, watching Burke's face as the sentence came down, watching him realize his life was over. It still wasn't enough, but it was something. After the sentencing, Clark ran into Detective Richardson in the hallway. Justice served, Richardson said. Some of it. Hancock's still out there. But his warrant's federal now. He assaulted a bounty hunter last week, trying to avoid arrest. He'll spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder. Good. Richardson studied him. You look like a man who's been through a war. Feels like it. Was it worth it? Clark thought about that. About what he'd done. Who he'd become. The lines he'd crossed. About Daniel slowly recovering, going back to school, rebuilding his life. About Sarah still worried, but relieved the worst was over. Ask me in 10 years, Clark said. 2 weeks later, Clark got a call from an unknown number. Mr. Martin? This is Marshal Dan Duke from the U.S. Marshal Service. We've apprehended Clyde Hancock. Thought you'd want to know. Where'd you find him? Mexico. Tried to flee the country, but we've got agreements. He's being extradited, faces federal charges for fleeing, plus the state charges for assault. He's done. Thank you. After the call, Clark went to his garage. He looked at the board. 8 faces, all crossed out now. Burke in prison for 12 years. Gaines, 5 years. Lou, 5 years. Kinney, 18 years. Hill, 18 months. Sharp, permanent injuries. Griffin, probation. Hancock, federal custody. All 8 accounted for. Clark took down the board, dismantled it piece by piece. Put the photos in a folder, locked it in his filing cabinet. Cleaned the garage workshop until no trace of his investigation remained. Then he went inside, where Sarah was making dinner and Daniel was studying at the kitchen table, jaw finally unwired, smile returning slowly. Hey, Dad, Daniel said. Help me with this calc problem. Clark sat down beside his son, looked at the textbook, tried to remember derivatives and integrals from 30 years ago. Sure, he said. Let's figure out together. And for the first time in months, Clark Martin felt like himself again. Not a vigilante, not an avenger, just a father. 6 months later, Clark was back at work full-time, running crews, building projects, living normally. Sarah had stopped looking at him with concern. Daniel had transferred to a 4-year university, thriving, the attack becoming a memory rather than a constant presence. On a Saturday afternoon, Clark got a call from Jacob. You hear about Burke? Clark's stomach tightened. What about him? Someone jumped him in prison. Rival gang, apparently. He's in the infirmary, critical condition. Clark felt something cold settle in his chest. He gonna make it? Don't know. But even if he does, word is he's been marked. The guys you helped take down, Lou and Gaines, they've been talking inside, making connections with other crews. Burke's got targets on his back from multiple directions. After the call, Clark sat in his truck processing. He hadn't ordered a hit, hadn't reached out to anyone inside, but he destroyed Burke's empire, made him vulnerable, painted him as a liability and a failure. In prison, that was a death sentence. Part of him felt satisfaction. Another part felt something darker, a question about what kind of man he'd become, what kind of justice this really was. His phone buzzed. Text from Daniel. Ace my engineering exam. Thanks for helping me study. Clark stared at that message for a long time. Then he put the phone away and drove home, where his family was waiting, where his life was rebuilding, where the past was finally starting to release its grip. He never found out if Burke survived, never followed up, never checked. Some questions were better left unanswered. A year after the attack, Daniel graduated with honors and got accepted to a prestigious engineering program. At the graduation party, Clark stood with Sarah, watching their son laugh with friends, whole and healed. He's okay, Sarah said softly. We're okay. Yeah. Do you regret it? What you did? Clark thought about that honestly. About the revenge, the violence, the lines he'd crossed. About Burke and his crew paying prices in different currencies, some legal, some not. I regret what I had to become, he said finally. But I don't regret protecting my family. Sarah squeezed his hand. Good answer. Across the yard, Daniel caught Clark's eye and raised his glass in a silent toast. Clark raised his beer in return. In the end, this was what mattered. Not revenge, not justice, not systems that failed or violence that answered violence. Just a father and son, both still standing, both still whole, both still alive. The story could have ended there. Neat, resolved, everyone moving forward. But life doesn't work that way. 3 years after Burke's conviction, Clark got a letter. No return address, prison postmark. Inside was a single page, handwritten. You think you won. You think you destroyed me. But I've got 12 years to plan, to think, to wait. And when I get out, I'm coming for you. Not your son. Not your wife. You. This ain't over, old man. It's just beginning. RB. Clark read it twice, then burned it in the fireplace. He didn't tell Sarah. Didn't tell Daniel. Just filed it away in his mind under problems for later and went back to his life. Because Burke was right. It probably wasn't over. Revenge had a way of echoing, multiplying, creating new cycles. But Clark had 9 years before Burke got out. 9 years to prepare. 9 years to be ready. And if Burke went around to, Clark Martin would be waiting. Older, maybe. Slower, probably. But no less dangerous. Because that's what fatherhood had taught him. You protect your family, no matter the cost. No matter how long it takes. No matter who stands in your way. And if that made him a monster, then so be it. Some monsters were necessary. Some monsters kept worse monsters at bay. The final chapter of this story wouldn't be written for years. Maybe decades. Maybe never. But as Clark sat on his porch one evening, watching the sunset, beer in hand, the weight of the past finally lifting, he allowed himself a moment of peace. His son was alive. His wife was safe. His enemies had paid. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. For now, that was enough. The rest, Burke's threats, future confrontations, the shadows of choices made, those were tomorrow's problems. Today, Clark Martin was just a father who'd done what fathers do. Protected his family, and lived to see another day. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.